really excited for the folks I'm about to introduce to you for our discussion this afternoon. So these presentations are one of the President's Choice presentations. So they were specifically chosen from over 100 approved conference presentations to best highlight the conference theme of diversity and inclusion. Nicole Noble, Logan Winkelman, and Ashley Penner will be presenting current trends in diversity recruiting practices. They are each licensed professional counselors in the state of Texas and conducted research together on the topic of diversity recruiting because they noticed a need for this information based on their work with students on campus. Dr. Nicole Noble teaches counseling as an assistant professor in the counselor education program in the College of Education at Texas Tech University. Dr. Logan Winkelman currently teaches as an assistant professor in the clinical counseling and mental health department at the Texas Tech University Health Sciences Center. Ashley Penner is completing her PhD in counselor education at Texas Tech University and works as the Associate Director of Student Development at the Texas Tech University Career Center. They are all passionate about serving a diverse student body on their campus. Thank you for supporting NCDA, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction, Seth. I know I speak for me and my colleagues when I say that we're very excited to be able to present to you and talk about the research that we did. This topic is particularly relevant for career counselors and career service professionals because in the past, employees avoided disclosing their non-working identities in the workplace. Because many companies are embracing the diverse identities in the workplace, because many companies are embracing the diverse identities their employees hold, there's been a shift in what employees disclose. Specifically, we're seeing that employers are becoming more comfortable disclosing aspects of their identity, such as being a parent, an individual with a disability, or an individual in a sexual or gender identity minority group in the workplace. We're also seeing an increase in candidates progressively disclosing their diverse backgrounds during job interviews and candidates rating the support of those identities as increasingly important. In the workplace, on the other hand, we see that authentic communication is becoming more valued. Due to the changing demographics of the nation and an increasingly globalized world, businesses are recognizing the benefits of embracing and supporting a diverse workforce. Through hiring, training, and retaining employees from diverse backgrounds, businesses are better able to identify creative, innovative solutions to meet the needs of a rapidly connected, diverse world. In order to better assist clients seeking employment and employers searching for job candidates, career counselors need to be informed of the current trends in diversity recruiting practices. With this information, career counselors can further aid employers in recruiting diverse, talented candidates, as well as advocating for students from all backgrounds and ability levels to join in workplaces that support their professional development and well-being. As career services professionals, we encourage students to ask informed questions regarding employment to assess environmental fit. Policies, resources, and programming all have an impact on a workplace's culture. Today, we will focus on companies' diversity practices and inclusion initiatives in the workplace.
Before we begin, we wanted to share some brief information about our backgrounds and our reasons for interest in this topic. My name is Nicole Noble, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I am an assistant professor of counselor education at Texas Tech University. Prior to my role teaching counseling, I worked at the Texas Tech Career Center for 5 years. My colleagues and I became interested in this topic of diversity recruiting due to our involvement with various offices all across campus. Throughout my work at the Career Center, I served as a coordinator and liaison with the International Affairs Office, the Center for Research of Autism, and the LGBTQI Office. During this experience, I witnessed firsthand how impactful a person's unique identity could be on their career development, job search, and their identity as a whole. And Logan, if you want to unmute yourself.
There we go. Can you all hear me now? Good. My name is Logan Winkelman. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm an assistant professor and program director at Texas Tech University Health Sciences Center within the Clinical Counseling and Mental Health Department. Prior to my role at HSC, I was the associate director of student development at the Texas Tech University Career Center, where I served as a liaison to student athletes and military veterans, providing tailored career programming and services to students and alumni. My name is Ashley Tenner. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm an associate director in the University Career Center at Texas Tech University. In my experiences in the Career Center, I've been able to develop a strong partnership with the Student Disability Services Office on campus, and also worked with Nicole on the Workforce Recruitment Program. As an LTC, I recognize the need to advocate for diverse populations and saw this as an opportunity to do so. My colleagues and I felt that if we could understand more regarding employers' preferences and diversity recruiting practices, then we could better inform our students who are encountering unique issues. Throughout this presentation, we will share a lot of information about Texas Tech University because that is where our experience is from. But we'd like you to consider the needs of your clients and the students that you've worked with in the past and think about how this information would apply. So today, we're going to share information regarding the specific populations in which we were interested, employers' recruiting and retaining initiatives, and how we gathered this information, and practical implications and recommendations for career counselors. We understand, in light of the COVID emergency, that diversity recruiting may not appear to be an extremely pressing issue, but we believe that in order to solve the current health and economic crisis, companies will need to rely on a diverse set of employees who can offer unique perspectives to address pressing issues.
This quote from William George Jordan summarizes the need to remain steadfast on the topic. The man who is calm has his course in life clearly marked on his chart. His hand is ever on the helm. Storm, fog, night, tempest, danger, hidden reefs. He is ever prepared and ready for them. He is made calm and serene by the realization that in these crises of his voyage, he needs a clear mind and a cool head, that he has not to do but to do each day the best he can by the light he has, that he will never flinch nor falter for a moment, that though he may have to tack and leave his course for a time, he will never drift. He will never get back into the truth channel. He will keep ever headed towards his harbor. When he will reach it, how he will reach it matters not to him. He rests in calmness, knowing that he has done his best. If his best seems to be overthrown or overruled, then he must still bow his head in calmness. To no man is permitted to know the future of his life, the finality. To this man is ever only committed new beginnings, new wisdom, and new days to use the best of his knowledge. Again, while there are many pressing issues currently, continuing the work of assisting employers in identifying, hiring, and retaining diverse talent and assisting diverse students in identifying empowering employers is still a very pressing topic. To learn more about this topic, we collected information from employers using a survey. Our goal was to find out what strategies employers are using to recruit and retain individuals from diverse backgrounds. Specifically, we were concerned with individuals who identify in the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer LGBTQ+ community, international students, veterans, individuals with disabilities, and individuals from diverse ethnic and minority backgrounds. As we selected these populations for our study, we did so because, as I mentioned, of our previous experiences at Texas Tech. And I had the opportunity to work closely with the LGBTQ+ office. And in 2015, the LGBTQIA office was established and has grown substantially each year due to the incredible work of the director there. The director of the office reached out to every student affairs department all across our campus and asked each department to create content and material that would specifically address our LGBTQ+ students on campus. We created presentations regarding helping employers create friendly workplaces for LGBTQ+ employees and help students who identify as members of the LGBTQ+ community in navigating the workplace, such as deciding if they want to disclose their identities in the workplace, coping with name changes when applying for jobs, deciding whether or not to include their involvement in the LGBTQ+ organizations on their resume, and much more. We selected the international student population because Texas Tech has over 3,000 international students. And Texas Tech recognized the difficult transition from student to employee due to the complicated issues surrounding applying for a position while seeking sponsorship. Logan and I had the opportunity to assist with several specific international recruiting events, both in person and virtually.
During my time at UCC working with international students, I learned about their unique career needs. And in fact, my dissertation looked at university career counselors' perceptions of counseling international students in order to gain more insight into more effective and individualized career services to enhance international student success within the university setting and as they transition to the workforce. We felt it was imperative to include this population in our study. Additionally, the UCC created a strong collaborative relationship within our Office of Military Veterans Programs, and Texas Tech University is proud to have been recognized by several bodies for being one of the top military-friendly universities in the nation. Thus, we have a large number of military veteran students and alumni who we develop specialized career programming and services for. For this reason, we included questions specifically about military veteran populations.
The desire to include questions focused on supporting individuals with disabilities grew out of the individual appointments and programming we have targeted toward this population. Our office has presented webinars regarding disclosing a disability in the job search process to students and participated in the Workforce Recruitment Program, a federal hiring initiative for individuals with disabilities. Our partnership with the Student Disability Services Office on campus has allowed us to share information and make referrals between offices as appropriate. In the past, Texas Tech has received recognition for being a top disability-friendly institution, which has attracted even more students with disabilities to our campus, and we've seen that reflected in our student appointments.
In addition to our collaboration with the Disability Services Office, we also had the chance to collaborate with the Burkhart Center, which is devoted to the research and education of individuals with autism. There are high-functioning students with autism who participate in a program called Connections for Academic Success and Employment, or CASE. The CASE program allows students to work with a learning specialist who meets regularly with the students to help them navigate college and connect with various services across campus, one of those services being the University Career Center. So the Career Center held several workshops specifically designed for students with autism from CASE to help them apply for and obtain employment. We selected individuals from diverse ethnic and racial minority backgrounds because of our work with students who are undocumented, first-generation students, a part of the mentoring program, individuals from diverse ethnic minority and scholars. Each of these collaborations across campus and interactions with students one-on-one influence our interest in addressing the gap between these populations and employers' recruiting strategies.
Ashley, you are muted.
Thank you. So now that we've talked about why we chose the questions that we did, let's talk more about the data. So to better assist the students who hold these various identities, we contacted employers and recruiters who recruit candidates at Big 12 universities and asked them to participate in a survey at the beginning of 2019. These results are also published in the NACE journal, which we have cited in our references. The survey addressed recruiters' diversity recruiting practices, workplace policies, strategies, resources, and inclusion initiatives. We had 78 responses to the survey. As you can see in the first graph on the page, 37%, the majority of the respondents were from companies of 1 to 100 employees in size, while 33% of the respondents represented companies who employed 1,000 or more employees. Therefore, we had a broad range of respondents from companies varying in size. Within the qualitative portion of the survey, several individuals shared that they were either the only employee in their company or one of less than 5 employees. In these instances, they acknowledged that the responses might skew the data, but wanted to provide support to the focus of the research because they saw a need for it. We gave respondents the opportunity to share their gender identification and race and ethnicity if they felt comfortable doing so. While we included several options of gender identification, the majority of respondents, or 61%, identified as cisgender females, and 35% identified as cisgender males, with cisgender meaning that an individual's gender identity aligns with the sex they were assigned at birth. A few participants indicated they would prefer not to say their gender. We allowed participants to write in their own race or ethnicity. Regarding respondents' ethnicity, 65% identified as Caucasian white, 20% identified as Hispanic, 10% identified as African American Black, and 3% identified as Black and white.
While only 44% of the companies had a dedicated recruiter devoted to diversity recruiting, 48 participated in at least one diversity recruiting event, and 59% incorporated a diverse set of interviewers to promote diversity recruiting. For our attendees who may not be aware of Texas Tech University, it's located in Lubbock, Texas, which is in the panhandle of Texas. Lubbock has 3 major economic influences: a thriving university, well-respected medical facilities, and a large agriculture industry. Lubbock is not near any metropolitan area. You may be familiar with Dallas, Texas, but that is a 5-hour drive away. So due to geographic factors, we've had difficulty getting employers to come recruit on our campus. Because of our geographic challenges, we have found that we are able to get bigger named employers such as Facebook and Uber to attend our events as long as we promoted diversity recruiting events, such as for our international students or individuals with autism. Additionally, Texas Tech University achieved official designation as a Hispanic Serving Institution, or HSI, which has allowed for bigger named companies to recruit with us, since many companies have requirements and restrictions on what universities they can recruit with based on such designations.
The data of this study was obviously collected prior to the June 15, 2020 Supreme Court ruling that workplace discrimination against individuals in gender and sexual minority groups is prohibited. Prior to this ruling, as you may be aware, some states allowed workplace discrimination against these populations, while other states prohibited it. Now, as a result of this ruling and workplace discrimination against LGBTQ+ employees is now federally prohibited. Because we didn't have the chance to know that was about to happen, we asked some questions. So in our study, which we conducted in 2019, 1 of 3 employers asked about gender on application, and 19 had a dress code policy that influences only one gender. While many employers were including sexual orientation and gender identity in their non-discrimination policy, approximately half had also sponsored and hired an international student. Of the companies that sponsored international employees, 62.5% were smaller than 1,000 employees. Smaller companies that have not yet hired an international student may wish to consider this option because their peers have successfully navigated the federal hiring laws. Further, career service professionals may want to share this data with international students so that they can broaden their employer search and increase their opportunities for employment.
So as you can see, the majority of companies surveyed were involved in numerous diversity initiatives and inclusive practices through their recruiting materials, strategic business plan, and consideration of employee minority representation. Some companies even included diversity in their mission statement. As you can see by the chart, the majority of companies incorporated diverse images of their employees in their recruiting materials, but only a few companies incorporated diversity into their mission statement. We attributed this difference to the fact that mission statements may guide the branding of the company as well as the product produced, rather than guiding the direction of the company's hiring strategies or workplace culture. However, organizations may wish to engage in self-reflection to ensure that their company not only represents diversity while recruiting and in marketing materials, but also considers other aspects of diversity and inclusion practices within their company. With the recent national response to racial injustice, there's been an increasing call for companies to share the representation of diverse groups within their company, specifically within the executive leadership of the organization. Further, career services professionals might recommend that their students review companies beyond the promoted recruiting materials and consider other demonstrations of inclusive practices. For example, students could search for transparent information regarding minority representation among levels and departments. This might include the percentage of minority employees within the company, as well as within specific departments and management. This information would allow job candidates to be aware of the number of employees from minority backgrounds in leadership positions.
Within our study, 52% of companies offered a diversity training for their employees. Included in diversity trainings were disability awareness at 49%, hiring veterans training, 43%, sexual orientation and gender identity, 40%, and awareness building about historically marginalized populations, 39% of the time. This was an important area to include in our survey because TTU students are accustomed to a variety of diversity initiatives and programs offered through the university. In fact, Texas Tech was recently listed as a leader in inclusivity and equity on the Athletic Equality Index. In 2017, Athlete Ally, a nonprofit advocacy group, focused on LGBTQ+ equality, creating the Athletic Equality Index, or AEI, to measure inclusion policies and practices within collegiate athletics. The index focuses on the 65 NCDA Division I institutions within the Power 5 conferences, that being Big 12, the ACC, Big 10, Pac-12, and SEC, support LGBT student athletes, coaches, administrators, staff, and fans. An updated AEI released in December reflects just how far Texas Tech University has come since 2017, when the university established the Office of LGBTQIA Education and Engagement within our Student Affairs and Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. We jumped up 22 points for a score of 90 out of 100 points on the index. The efforts to foster and amplify a culture of equity and inclusion on campus took Texas Tech from a 2017 score in the bottom half of the Big 12 Conference and among other Texas institutions to second place in both groups. The score also put the university well above the Big 12 average, the averages of other conferences being between 65 to 84, and the overall averages for all 5 conferences at 76.
Not surprisingly, companies with more than 500 employees tended to offer additional resources than their smaller counterparts. These resources included participation in advocacy events for LGBTQ+, participation in disability awareness events, and trainings for historically marginalized populations. A key point of interest in recent discussion concerning the LGBTQ+ community in the workplace is the availability of non-gendered restroom facilities, which can be defined as multiple stalled restrooms available for all individuals regardless of gender. While 38% of employers with 1,000 employees or more reported having a single stalled non-gendered restroom, only 25% of companies with fewer than 100 employees reported the same. Overall, only 34.1% of companies surveyed offered some form of non-gendered restroom option for their employees. A recommendation for companies that are seeking to increase their organization's gender inclusivity resources would be to offer a non-gendered restroom, even if it's just a single stalled option. Career service professionals may wish to inform students who would prefer a non-gendered restroom to include this in their research when they look for companies. Additionally, it could be beneficial to look at initiatives in which companies have participated to support gender non-binary employees. Qualitatively, some recruiters disclosed that they were a small organization and they didn't have very many employees. So they felt that some of the questions that we asked were not as applicable to their organization. However, they stated that they felt compelled to complete the survey because they wanted to support research regarding diversity recruiting practices.
So based on our survey results, our study suggests that companies are increasingly recognizing diversity issues. Many are participating in events specifically targeting diversity recruiting, while others have a representative focused on diversity recruiting. Not only are employers seeking opportunities to recruit diverse employees, but organizations are also offering resources to promote more inclusive company environments. Career service professionals can identify and develop relationships with employers who integrate diversity practices and offer these employers the opportunity to promote their diversity initiatives directly to students. When developing relationships with local employers, it could also be beneficial to highlight some of the diverse identities the students that you work with hold and how employers can support and attract the top talent within those groups. As you can see, based on our experience, partnerships are also very important. So the on-campus partnerships that you have with different groups supporting students can help you facilitate the connection between employers and students. Furthermore, a large percentage of companies surveyed have employees who attended training related to veterans issues, disability awareness, sexual orientation, gender identity, and historically marginalized populations. It may be advantageous for companies to highlight these training opportunities in their company literature and campus presence through job fairs, information sessions, and one-on-one meetings with career services professionals. For smaller organizations with 500 or less employees that might have limited resources and the ability to offer trainings or diversity initiatives, there are still inexpensive changes they can make to increase their inclusion efforts. These minor, inexpensive changes include adding gender identity and sexual orientation to non-discrimination policies, or selecting individuals from diverse backgrounds to recruit candidates for employment. Career services professionals may recommend to their recruiter partners that they add such non-discrimination policies to job postings shared within their institution.
So career service professionals may also consider exploring individuals' values regarding diversity in the workplace. This exploration could be achieved through a variety of activities, such as including specific questions regarding diversity and inclusion in career exploration, job search, and mock interview appointments. For example, career service professionals may consider asking some of the following questions in their one-on-one appointments. For example, when searching for a potential employer, what are the key attributes that you seek? Another question could be, have you identified values you want in a potential employer? If so, what are those values? What type of company culture do you value? What type of culture would make you feel valued and included? What type of colleague do you see yourself working well with? What type of colleague do you see yourself not working well with? When researching a company, how can you identify these characteristics? In addition to these questions, career service professionals may also suggest questions individuals consider while researching a potential employer. So these questions could include, are this company's values evident in their literature? If so, are they congruent with my own values? Does this company offer training opportunities for employees regarding diversity and inclusion? Does this company include diversity and inclusion in their workplace policies or strategies? Does this company offer resources and initiatives regarding diversity and inclusion? Through identifying companies' diversity recruiting, hiring, training, and retaining practices involving policies, resources, and training initiatives, career service professionals can provide insight to recruiters and job candidates. The continuously growing diversity of the nation with increased communication throughout the world requires new recruiting strategies to enhance productivity, economic growth, and personal and professional well-being in the workplace. Today, we have covered employers' current trends in diversity recruiting practices and how these trends influence our work as career counselors and career service professionals. In order to better serve our employers and students, we think this quote highlights the need for change regarding diversity recruiting practices. If you want something new, you have to stop doing something old, by Peter Drucker. We hope you will use this information and recommendations to assist your individuals or students and employers in navigating an ever-changing world of work.
Here are some of the references that we use for our presentation today. Now we would like to open it up to any questions you may have. If you have questions, please type them into the chat box.
So remember, if you have questions, please make sure that you send them to all participants so that we can all see them. We do have someone that asked for a list of the questions. I'm assuming the questions that we encourage you to ask students. I'm happy to copy and paste those over into the chat box. Nicole, maybe you could address this one thing that might come up as a result of this. So in the slides, we talk about 50% of companies have sponsored an international employee. I think we all know. Well, in light of COVID, how do you think this will change in the future?
So as we know, on June 22nd, I believe President Trump signed an executive order which temporarily froze work visas for our international students. And these visas included the H-1B. So this order did not impact recent winners of this year's H-1B lottery that were already here in the U.S., but international students can still leverage their OPT to secure employment. And they can do that through either different organizations, nonprofit organizations, or universities, which are all exempt from that H-1B cap. But the order impacts international individuals who are currently outside of the U.S. So even if these international individuals have already been approved for the 2021 visa, they will not be able to come to the U.S. until that executive order is removed if they're still currently away from the country.
Okay. We did have a question come in, so this is a three-parter. So would you recommend that we consider facilitating some kind of survey like that to our employer network? And then how much time did it take to collect and analyze the data? And how did this data inform our practices and how we supported employers and students?
So the benefits of collecting this data at your institution is that if you do have those partnerships across campus with various offices, then you could give them some of the data back, and that could be really beneficial for them as they're working through trying to learn more about their students and how they can help their students connect with employers. So I think it could be very helpful for you. Ideally, hopefully, our book would generalize to other relations as well. And we did submit those surveys to all employers at Big 12 institutions, so that's kind of across the nation. But as far as how much time it took us to collect, we sent it out. It took about a month to get feedback back from everyone, and then analyzing the data took quite a bit longer, probably with all three of us working and kind of going back and forth, maybe about 3 months total for us to come up with the results. And then we had submitted those, and they're in the NACE journal. So if you want to look up more about this topic, go to the NACE journal on diversity recruiting practices, and you'll find more information there, which also took a while to get that published. But it informed our practices with students, because we can say to international students who ask us questions or say, like, but smaller companies never sponsor, we can say, actually, that's not true. According to our recent survey, 62.5% of small companies under 100 have sponsored before. So it can kind of open up and kind of broaden their horizons. That's just an example, but I think it's been beneficial for our work with students, and also just for us to be more aware of some of the laws that are really affecting our work as career service professionals.
Mm-hmm. I'll add on to that. So just if you're typing questions, make sure that in the drop down you've selected all participants. If you select all attendees, we can't see those as presenters. I'll also just piggyback off of what Nicole was saying. Recently, we had a company that asked about how they're wanting to get involved with diversity and inclusion student organizations. And through that meeting, we were able to start a conversation. I was able to ask the question, what type of resources do you offer for diverse employees? And they kind of stumbled a little bit of, what do you mean? And so because we had done this research, we had started this conversation, we're able to help, we were really able to help direct that and give them some ideas to help support their employees. Another question, so what were some of the benefits of the mentor program? I'm assuming that you're talking about the mentor program that was directed for individuals from diverse backgrounds. Nicole, do you want to talk about that?
So we selected one of the topics of ethnic and ethnic minority groups because of our mentor program where we work with students, and we have had employers come speak at some of those mentor programs. But there also is a mentor program that companies offer for their employees from diverse backgrounds. So in talking with companies, specifically people who have autism and their work within those companies, they've been able to identify somebody within the organization as their mentor. And some companies have done this, and they found it really helpful so that they can talk with somebody else and just have somebody to ask things like, where's the best place to get lunch here? Or just some of the basic stuff that a new employee just kind of has to figure out on their own. Instead, and they didn't have to do that anymore. They were able to just ask their mentor, and found it to be really helpful.
So we did have a question as well. So someone who used to work in the career service department at the University of District of Columbia, they talked about using Handshake as their job search platform or their employee management platform, and allowing that to filter employers by international friendly, veteran, et cetera. How has Texas Tech leveraged Handshake? I'll maybe answer this since I'm currently in the Career Center. So we don't use Handshake, the University Career Center, for all majors. Our College of Business uses Handshake. We use 1220 for our data. And we encourage that. We can use that to help encourage students to do their research ahead of time and use that information to help guide their research on the types of initiatives. Logan and Nicole, is there anything you want to add to that?
So I think that students always really appreciate that option where they can go on whatever job search platform that your institution has purchased. They appreciate being able to go see if an employer has checked that they are internationally friendly or not, or they're veteran friendly, or whatever options that you have available on your platforms that you're using. I think students appreciate that, but sometimes I think it can limit their options because they're not seeking some employers who maybe quickly typed in the information and weren't checking all of the boxes like maybe they should have been filtering for. They were only checking like the required ones. So I always suggest students kind of look beyond that and open their horizons a little bit more, but I do think it can be helpful.
In terms of diversity practices, especially ethnic minority hiring, how do you think employers will respond to the current conversation on systemic racism?
Absolutely. So I think that companies are more aware of their need to be responsive to that, specifically trying to be open about who is in their organization, what are the demographics of individuals within their organization. Apple does a really great job. You can see the number of women, the number of people from different ethnic backgrounds, all at various levels. You can see how many are involved in tech jobs, how many are involved in executive positions. So I think that employers, some are responding by just trying to put out more demographic information. Others probably will continue to have that increased trend of trying to recruit diverse candidates for positions so that they can be more open and transparent because their numbers may not look as good. So I think it's going to continue to change, though.
Next question, do you recommend that people disclose their disability status to employers, for example, autism?
Great question. So when we work with students, we like to think about how impactful is their disability status on their identity as a whole, and whether or not it's a hidden disability. I mean, obviously some students, if they're blind and they go in for an interview, it may be very apparent very quickly. So, and then at what stage? Because they could disclose it in the resume cover letter stage, they could disclose it in an interview. Some students need to request accommodations, but usually we'll try to work one-on-one with the student to identify some of their preferences. Typically, we will try to share some of the benefits of disclosing that disability and how it may help the employer understand them better, and how in the future, if they ever need an accommodation, if they've disclosed, like particularly for an individual with autism, that they have that, then their employer, when they're writing their evaluations and thinking about how they fit in within the company culture, may have more information than they would have otherwise had they not made that disclosure. So that's one of the toughest things. So I think about working with an individual with autism. A lot of the students really don't want to disclose because they've had very negative experiences before. But some of the students recognize that it could be beneficial for them. So it's a give and take on that.
So we have about 3 minutes left, so just a couple more questions. So one came in, what would historically marginalized populations, in quotations, consist mainly of? I'm assuming that you're referring to that data within our study. Nicole, could you touch on that?
So we left that topic broadly open. We didn't define it for the employer so that they could choose how they defined it, but I would say that that would be defined as ethnic, gender, sexual orientation, minority groups. So, and if you look at like the APA publication manual and how they would identify in their bias-free language section, they would have a lot of subgroups of that. And the more specific we can get when we talk about those populations, the better we can learn more about them as we're collecting data.
So probably our last question here then, does Texas Tech partner with any local HBCUs in your area?
So that's like a business hub, I'm assuming? Is that what HBCU?
No. So historically, yeah.
So we don't, in our area, we don't have hardly other institutions. We have Lubbock Christian University, but there would not be one for us to be able to partner with. It would be all the way like down in the lower part of Texas, which could be a 12-hour drive. So unfortunately, we haven't had the chance to do that.
Absolutely. And last question, is there a go-to one-pager guide we can access for language and terminology? Is there one specific that you would recommend?
The APA publication has great information on bias-free language and using that when you're collecting data or working with diverse groups. So I would say go to, I think it's chapter 3 or 4 of the APA 7th edition manual.
And I believe that
sorry, one more resource would be the Human Rights Campaign. They have a lot of other for LGBTQ plus populations.
And I believe that we are out of time. I did include our email addresses, so if we didn't get to your question or you think of anything later, please feel free to follow up with us either as a group or individually, and we'd be happy to continue this conversation.